This is a story about a cemetery. It's a long, rambling story about a cemetery, actually. And the cemetery that this story is about is far west of here in St. Louis. It's on the other side of the Continental Divide. But the story doesn't actually start in the cemetery. The story starts in my 6th grade schoolroom. My 6th grade teacher's name was James Hollingsworth, and Mr. Hollingsworth didn't really utilize textbooks a lot of my 6th grade year. Mr. Hollingsworth believed in different kinds of teaching opportunities, and so we raised Siamese fish and we raised guinea pigs. He had 15 dogs and cats, which he brought in routinely. He also had a small crocodile, so I'm a little nervous about the hamsters and gerbils that we raised. We also raised like a garden, so we had an indoor garden in my 6th grade room, and we bought things that little Western children really weren't very familiar with in the in the 60s. So we raised a plant called jalapeno that nobody was familiar with, and when we ate them, we all ran without permission into the hall to have water. So when Mr. Hollingsworth came in and said, we're going to build these really cool structures, none of us really paused because we were always doing weird things in the classroom. And he had us build these cages, these round, tall cages. So we put a round disc of wood down and a pole in the middle, and then screen, and then a round wooden thing at the top of it. We had no idea what we were going to do with these cages. We had like 10 of them in the classroom. And then one day we decided that we were going to go on a field trip. I should say Mr. Hollingsworth decided we were going to go on a field trip. So we went on a field trip to the cemetery in our town, and we had a fabulous time. We ran around the gravestones, but we were actually there for a purpose. And the purpose was that we went to the creek that went through the cemetery, and Mr. Hollingsworth carefully reviewed the plants by the creek, and he would cut them. And he gave us the cuttings. We had no idea why he was giving us these cuttings, and we carefully held them and then took them back to the classroom. And we took those cuttings and we put them up in the cages. So there was a cutting of a plant inside each of these round cages, and we waited. And we did other cool things like sing and that kind of stuff. And then we noticed that there were caterpillars on the plants that were inside these cages. They were beautiful caterpillars, yellow and black and white striped caterpillars. And we watched these caterpillars eat the plants that were in these cages, and then we got to watch them form their chrysalis. So they attached themselves to the plant and then wrap themselves around and do miraculous things, and then they were these beautiful little pods on the thing, and we thought that was pretty miraculous, just enough, a miracle right there. But what happened was we got to watch these chrysalises break open into butterflies, and they were all monarch butterflies. So he had gone in and seen the eggs. He recognized the eggs on all of the milkweed, and he recognized, then those are the plants that we took. So when butterflies hatch out of their chrysalis, they actually look kind of deformed. So their abdomens are giant and their wings are shriveled up and really tiny. And when they came out, we would put them on the windowsill. And what the butterflies do, they take all of that fluid that's in their abdomen and they pump it into the structures of their wings. And that's what makes their wings come like a wing of a butterfly. So their abdomens get small and they unfurl their wings, and the liquid in the framework holds them open, and they dried off and they flew away. And he didn't really know a lot about the monarch butterfly, the Mariposa monarcha. And I was really charmed about that whole process, but never really gave it much thought until 1976, when I went to the library and I found the National Geographic with the monarchs all over the cover of the National Geographic, and read the article and learned a lot more about monarch butterflies than I'd ever known before. They had suspected that monarchs were migrating to the mountains of northern Mexico, just north of Mexico City, and they had sent volunteer students through all of these forests at high altitude and low altitudes trying to find these butterflies, and they found them. And they found millions and millions of butterflies on the trees at a particular altitude in these mountains, and they found out that by tagging them and tracking the tags, they found that monarchs, not the monarchs that we raised on the other side of the Continental Divide, but the monarchs that are raised on this side of the Continental Divide, they go 1,500 miles. So they leave their homes, sometimes as far away as Canada, and they fly across all of Houston and St. Louis and all of these horrible conditions to fly across Mexico and to this very particular place in Mexico. And a little under 10 years ago, I got a chance to go to Mexico City and take a bus and go to the woods and see the monarchs in Mexico. Yay! So that's my story about the cemetery.